Hey everybody, it's Father Peter here. Welcome to my video log. Look who I've got. What could be better than to have Lise Leist with us here. Lise, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, love it that you're here. So we're going to have a little conversation about what's happening with race in America right now. But before we get started, I just want to make sure that everybody knows a bit about you, things that you would never say about yourself. So Lisa, you've spent your whole life in New York State, the Empire State, still living in Pound Ridge. You've been a member of St. Mark's for 30 years, which is shocking. 30 years ago, I had all this hair. I looked amazing. That was 30 years ago. You have been trained at Cornell in the diversity management program there. You've had differing jobs, a lot of different jobs, but in particular, you worked at the King School in Stanford, where you started off as a teacher, then later became a dean, and you oversaw community affairs, and you were the head, of course, of diversity and equity and inclusion there, making important contributions to that school. And then, of course, your current work with Future 5. Wow, what an organization Future 5 is. Really raising up the kids in Stanford, kids who need a helping hand, and what better helping hand could they get than to have you as the director of Pathways to Their Future. And also you have made incredible contributions to the life of our parish. And very notably during this past year, helping us as a parish to enter into significant dialogue, and that was with the New Canaan Dinners, courageous conversations, as you put it, a phrase I just love. And so I wonder if we might take a few moments and have a little courageous conversation. We had a wonderful conversation yesterday, and you started off just telling me a little bit about your daughter, Anya, and Anya saying, hey, Mom, how is it that you make it through this sort of thing? What happened in the 60s and the 70s? So I wonder if you might just say a word about that.
Yeah, you know, it's been wonderful having my daughter home, so we could have different conversations. And it's been tough one, and being single and being in this area and not being able to really get out and be with your friends, it's a challenge. So our evenings are very precious at home, and we try to bring everybody together as best as possible. But her concern is like, how will we get through this? I know we will, but how will we get through this? And yes, I'm a proud product of the 60s. And I know the trauma that I experienced as being a young girl. Like I mentioned earlier, I remember where I was September 15th, 1963. You know, I belonged to a Black Baptist church in Port Chester, New York. Going to church is what we did every single Sunday. Sunday school began at 8:30, and then church began at 10 o'clock. I couldn't tell you what time we got out of church, but I knew where it began. And I remember this particular Sunday sitting with my great-grandmother in church, and it's 10 o'clock, and then it's 10:15, and then it's a little bit later, and all of us not knowing what was going on. And then our pastor, Reverend William Guy, comes out, and he just stands there, and you can just see him just break down. And he says, let me tell you, I have to tell you what just happened. I just got a call from my friends and from Alabama. Church was bombed. 4 little girls were killed. I'm 8, 9 years old, and I'm sitting there with my sister thinking, is this what's going to happen to our church? Is somebody one day going to decide that we can't be together and bomb our church? So since I was a little girl, I've had this memory in my brain of those 4 little girls. And then later on, you know, not knowing how to process that. This is when black and white TVs were there. And all you could see was that, and all you could see the hate, the no love, people being attacked, the dogs being, you know, set on folks, all of that as a young girl. So now we fast forward to where we are now, and I think of our young people now and the trauma and what they're going to have to process from everything that we've experienced in the last 8 days and beyond. You know, I thought about it last night. It's 8 days. It took him he died in 8 minutes, 8 days, and the significance of those numbers. And so I hope that I'm prayerful, I'm hopeful that we can take this trauma that's gone back decades. I think about the letter that Martin Luther King wrote from the Birmingham jail. We need to go back to that letter again and take a look at it and see, we have to do these things. We have to come together and work together. And if it means protesting in this way, that's what we have to do. We are all disciples right now. Every one of us is a disciple. And how are we going to carry that message forward?
Oh, wow, beautiful reflection on some very, very painful things. We were talking about 1968, and now we're in 2020. You were a little girl, and now you're a woman, and you have a daughter and a son, and you have a white husband. You have lived all those years in the midst of contending with being a Black woman in America. Is there anything that, as you've lived your life and you come to this past 8 days, is this different than the previous 60 years, or how many years it's been, or something like that? Any different character that you would suggest?
The different piece is that everything was in the South. It's no longer the South. It's the world. We always pointed it's Alabama, it's Georgia. It's not. It's in our backyard. It's right here where we live and eat. And we think about the looting that's going on in those different neighborhoods. That is hard. But look where we live. We live here. There's no looting here. There's no one coming in trying to break in. We're lucky. We're blessed. But those folks have been living like that and been marginalized for a very long time. This just pushed everyone over the edge. I'm not saying it's right, but it just took that much. And unfortunately, people lost, and their lives lost. And some things can never be built up. But this is repeating itself like Watts. I mean, if this is a repeat, and we just can't move beyond that until we come together and become better disciples.
You have devoted the last, I don't know how many years of your life to really making the world a better place. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. You have literally actively had a job. You've gotten paid. It is your vocation. Who you are on the inside is what you do on the outside. You have a real vocation as a healer and repairer of the world, and particularly around issues, as we talked about, of race and diversity and inclusion and equity. Coach us all forward here a little bit. What sort of actions might the disciples of Jesus want to do to take, to move forward here?
To have the courage to ask the question and to listen. We're so quick to form an opinion without asking a question and without even listening. During this time, and especially this week, there have been some folks that have come in my life where I thought I really knew. I really thought I knew them, and I embraced them with love and kindness. And it's sad to come to find out now that I really didn't know them. And they really didn't know me. And to make these remarks that, this is not systemic and this is not epidemic, that hurts. That's hurtful, because it is an epidemic. It is systemic. And unless we take and I have an opportunity to really look inward and become disciples. Yesterday I was driving home. I took a nice little walk with someone yesterday, and all the thing I could think about is that I am not going to fear any evil. Lord, walk with me. I will fear no evil. Thy rod and thy staff can comfort me. That's what got me home, because I was feeling so anxious that I didn't know whether I can continue to do the work and share my message. We speak about families of color speaking to their children, especially their males. This is what I've done for my kids from day one. When you go out, there are certain things that you have to do. Zach, you're brown, you're walking brown. You have to behave in this way. I don't care that dad's white and I'm brown. You are walking brown. There are certain protocols. Anya, the same thing. I've had these conversations, so they know, they're aware. And I say that because I was unaware as a young girl. I had a boyfriend in life, and we were driving through Greenwich, Connecticut. And he had a really nice car. I always dated guys who had nice cars. But anyway, he had a very nice car. And we're driving through Greenwich. And all of a sudden, the lights go behind us, and we're pulled over. February, coldest day that I can imagine, I can remember. He was told to get out of the car, hands on top of the car, and I'm still sitting in the car. They patted him down. Then they asked me to get out of the car, put my hands up, asked me to remove my coat, and patted me down. I was 16 years old. I had never been touched like that. I still remember. I don't even like going to Greenwich now because it's a trigger. So my point is that there are things that happen that are often triggers, and those triggers will set off other triggers. So how do you manage that internally so that you don't have something that will set you off? So I've had those experiences, and I just try to manage them, so not thinking that I'm going to be next. I'm going to be the next one, but also telling that to my children. Things may happen, but don't let that trigger be something that you keep in you for the rest of your life. We all have triggers. We all have triggers.
Wow. Your story, which is so poignant and compelling, I know is a very common story amongst people of color, where there's two different rules. There's two different sets of rules.
Right.
And you even have that in your own household,
Right.
with two different sets of rules. I know a tiny little bit about your spiritual life and how it is that you stay grounded so that the triggers aren't pulled. We all have triggers. Surely that's true.
Yeah.
I wonder if you might share with us a little bit about how your prayer life helps you be you, and not be lost in moments that you're.
Yeah. So if I feel that piece coming up where I feel someone has said something or is making me feel uncomfortable, I have to step back first. I don't want to keep charging. And I think that's the piece, is how do you manage yourself inside to take it all in, take a breath. I always tell my kids, before you respond, like a job interview, people will ask you a question and you're so anxious to respond. You're better off saying, you know what, let me think about that. Let me just think about it. That gives you time to pause and think, how do I really want to respond? But also so that you can process what someone else is saying. That whole listening piece is critical. To listen. It's hard for us because it's like we're taking a test every time. We want to get to the answer and move on. Doing this work, having the conversation that we're having now, it's taking our time. It's taking our time to listen and love and forgive and not think that everyone is coming after you. And that's a hard lesson to think, especially as a woman of color. You're on the defensive. You're constantly you're feeling you have to prove yourself all the time. When I get up in the morning and brush my teeth, there's nothing happening with the outside, only on the inside. Nothing is changing this. So I'm walking brown for the rest of my life. And what that feels, I can't hide. So, I don't want to be invisible, but I almost feel like I have to, to feel accepted, to feel welcomed. And so what I'm working with now with these students of color who are high school students who don't have much, some of them are working 30 plus hours a week to support their families. Now they're having to do their schoolwork online, and many of them don't have resource. So we're setting up the cycle of poverty to continue because this is already a marginalized group of people. They've already lacked the resources. So how are we going to, as the faith leaders, which I call you and the clergy, that's what got me through. And that's what I think is going to get us through, is our faith and relying on our faith leaders. We don't have Martin, we don't have Malcolm. We have you and we have everyone else out there. And how are we going to really use that to our advantage to bring us home? We have to go home. This is our house. We have to clean it up.
Well, Lise, you are a very powerful role model in the lives of these young folks who are part of the Future 5 ministry, the Future 5 programs. Just an extraordinary organization with extraordinary people in it, raising up kids. And the stories of these kids are so empowering. You were saying before we started in recording our conversation that these are kids who already have challenges, but now the pandemic has brought greater challenges, and the economic downturn brought even greater challenges, and now the explosion of life on the streets, the hidden racism, the subdued racism is now clear for everybody to see. I wonder if you might just say a word about their stress levels and what it is that you say to them, because you're their coach, you're their life coach.
It's interesting. I'm very connected to Stanford Police Department and have been for some time in a good way. And that one particular officer, Silas Red, we've had many, many conversations. But the one thing that Silas Red likes to do is meet with all of our youth and meet with, and now he really wants to do this in a way, and give him, what he will do is give them his card. And that is like, if you get yourself into a situation where you feel like you need help, here's someone you can call. And so the conversations I've had with our students, well, we just had a town hall meeting of such this week, and to tell them, you know what, it is hard. It's very hard. These are difficult times. What you can do now is to do your job, to stay in school and get your education. With that, you're going to beat them at their game. You will win. You will persevere. You have to stay in school. And I told them about my great-grandmother, who was one of 15 or so, I've told you this, born free, with a third grade education. If she could do it back then, we can do this. We weren't born slaves. We were born free. We have challenges, but we were born free. And so we have to figure this out. We have to do it. You have to do it. It's hard. Yes, it's hard. Very, very hard. But get your education. And that's what I've been driving, is for them to really do that at all cost.
Yeah. So, I think obviously the great hope of our time here is that that we have sort of my mom's old phrase, the straw that broke the camel's back, that that large swaths of the country we can see in bold disposition here, that the country is not equal. It's not equal footing for everybody, and that we need to do something about the systemic issues facing our country. I wonder if you might say something about what your hopes or dreams are that will come out of this time.
Well, we're taking action. This is a call to action, and people have been sitting back and figuring out what to do, but now we are doing it. And I'm so impressed with our young people all over. I'm so impressed. I'm sitting back because that's where it's going to start. Them taking action, and it's across all races. It's not just Black males or Black women. It's across all races. To watch what was going on in the UK and Australia and global, I'm like, the youth are taking action, and that's where it has to come from. I mean, a lot of us are, you think about generational diversity. I'm 60s. That's a whole different. Now we're up into 2000, but there's before the 60s. And so their understanding is different. And it's very hard to reach back and teach or help folks learn who come from a different generation. This generational piece is wide, but the youth piece now, they see it, they get it, and they're taking action. And that'll make us stronger. We're listening to them. Yes, social media plays into a lot of it, but controlled in the right way, it'll serve us well.
Yeah, thank you. We would say now that in the life of St. Mark's, for instance, we have 5 generations in St. Mark's. If 20 years is a generation, we have people, newborns all the time, and people 100 years old. So it's an extraordinary span of generations. I also think that there are many people who have a disposition of love, the way of love, a kind of holy-heartedness that, regardless of generation, have a great desire for, equity, inclusion, and diversity. All God's people created in the image of God, and desirous of profound change in our community.
I agree.
Part of that is certainly going to come out of what you have called courageous conversations, and the need for us to be able to listen, as you've pointed out, and the need for us to share, people of all different viewpoints. That if we become monolithic and 2 different sides, it becomes like World War I, trench warfare, where people from each side lob bombs and the other. We need to come into what used to be in World War I called no man's land. I wonder if you might just say something about that as we come together we're going to come together as a community again in courageous conversations in some form. We're not quite sure what that looks like as we're streaming now, but tell me what you do with when somebody says something that is either empowering to you or difficult for you. You said you take a deep breath, but how about when you go home? You certainly cannot have held on to every disparaging remark you have received as a Black woman in America for 60 years. Tell me, how is it that you can coach everybody involved in the courageous conversations to have that kind of let go-ness, that forgiveness, that grace of God? How do you get to that spot?
Your timing couldn't be better, because this is kind of every night at the Leist household, at least lately, where you have my daughter in her 30s and then my husband and myself who have different ways of thinking. And she's very much like representative of what you see youth today. She's very strong, but she's also doing work on her own. She's also, she's been hiring during this time with Sloan Kettering. That's part of the job that she's been doing and having different conversations. But the generational piece is here. My husband is a product of the Vietnam War. So, he has one way of thinking, and then here I come through. We will have some tense times here, very tense times here. My children are both dating, and they're dating. They both happen to be dating someone who's an Italian family. So we have their voices to the table. But it's in finding that balance. But I think the beauty of our family is that my husband lets me get it out, and he gives me the white view, so to speak. Here's what they're thinking, or here's what we're thinking. Here's what you're seeing. Here's what you're hearing. But let me help you how to manage this conversation. That's what I love about it. I'm not white, so I don't know what that room looks like, but he does. And he will come to me and say, you know what? I know why they said that, or I know what you heard, but here's where I think you can take it to help you have a better understanding. And that has been really helpful, that he can come to me in that way. I work with Pine Manor College, as you know. I serve as the vice chair of the college. We just partnered with Boston College. Boston College is giving Pine Manor College $50 million to do a teach out program. Pine Manor College is a college now for first generation, low income, under-resourced students. Here I am sitting on a board with mostly folks that don't look like me, and I have an opportunity to be in that room. That's the difference, having a seat at the table. But even better than that, to have a meeting with Father Leahy, the president of Boston College, to sit down with him and have a conversation. He's asking me, what's it like to be in the room? And I felt blessed and so happy, and knowing that there are people out there who really want to work together with us. But having, as you said, breathing, for me, it's breathing and not taking it as personal. But also to be strong and to share how I feel, and hope that people will be receptive to that.
Well, I just want to say, everybody I know wants to be in the room with you. And really just incredible, deep, down to the toes, respect and affection and love for you, for who you are, and for the courage that you have demonstrated, the grace and the love that you've demonstrated in your life. You're an incredible credit to the human condition and what human beings were created for. And we are all better for knowing you, and we're better for having you in our parish and leading. There was a time when we were talking about you're leading the courageous conversations, and I didn't know if I wanted to let you do it, because I thought you were gonna get hurt.
I know.
I didn't want you to get hurt, and you just were like, it was like you patted me on my bald head and said, it's gonna be okay.
Okay, it really is okay, and that's the piece. You can't please everyone. We want to be pleasers, because that's who we are. But some days it's just not going to happen, and you have to be comfortable with that. And I'm comfortable with that. I'm not going to win everywhere, but I see you, I hear you, I value you, and that's what I live by. I hear you, I see you, and I know you want to be heard, and I hear you. So that's okay.
Well, the conversations that you and Kyle Peterson, deacon in the Episcopal Church, led in our parish were those conversations of that nature. I think the most moving part of those conversations for me, or maybe we share this, was the people in the room that didn't necessarily share some of the same viewpoints as most people in the room, and that these people had the courage to come to say, I'm not on the same page with everybody here, and I came really, for the love of the same Lord, the love of the same body of Christ, to listen. And that kind of the courageousness, the hardness, the kind of grittiness of it and the uncomfortableness of it turns out to be the best part of it. That's the,
You're absolutely right. And I've had emails from different folks that attended some of these dinners, it's been lovely. I got an email this week, and I know maybe I shouldn't name, but I am going to name. I received an email from Mark Thorsheim this week. It was the most beautiful email, I cannot tell you. And it was titled The Breath of Life. And he shared his experience of being, what he's been feeling like 4 years ago to now. And then in that, he shared a letter that was sent from the president of Bucknell. It was the most beautiful letter, and it gave me such peace and comfort because he spoke to, we have to realize there's a breath of life coming, a new breath, a new day and a new breath. So my shout out is to Mark for being a good friend and a good support, for me, and that he had the courage to sit back and take the time to let me know. That has meant more to me than anything else. When we check on each other, we just pick up our email or call. Let's say, I'm thinking about you. You're in my heart today. That goes so far, so far.
Thank you for sharing that. Mark is utterly and completely devoted to you and finds you to be a great light in the world. And so I just want to, if you don't mind my adjusting something you said earlier with people looking to their clergy to lead the way. I would actually broaden that wildly to the people are looking for the light of Christ, and whoever it appears, and it appears bright, mightily brightly in you, and you are leading the way for so many of us. As we come to wrap up here, just a thing or two. So this coming Sunday, as you know, we're going to begin talking about race in America. Tom Jones is going to join us on Sunday morning. Tom, a good friend of yours, along with his wife, Addie, and we're going to continue the courageous conversations around race. I have no doubt in the coming week that you and Kyle and the clergy of our church are going to get together and continue to build a way forward here. This is a seminal moment for us, a chance for us to begin again and to begin anew and to redouble our efforts to do the holy work, to do God's work, to follow the way of love and to listen.
Amen.
And the truth is, you're our leader, regardless of what kind of college. We're just crazy and grateful to you for all.
I am grateful and blessed to you. And every day, anytime that I can drive by church, I drive through the lot. I know I can't go in, but I at least drive by. I do a drive by. Like, I'm thinking of you. I got you.
Well, what everybody out in TV land doesn't know that in your early morning exercises at the Y, that you would come in and in the quietude of the holy space, say your prayers. And I know those prayers are said in quiet, but they're heard loudly by our Lord. I have no doubt. And the Spirit runs like a riptide through your life. So peace and blessings. And thank you for spending so much time with us here today. And I know there's going to be great goodness that comes from your sharing your life with us. And we're really thankful.
God bless you.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.